All right. So this is the Science to Sorcery podcast. I'm Jake Marco. I'm a life activation practitioner and ritual master in the Modern Mystery School. And my mission with this podcast is to talk about the overlap of both science and spirituality, how it's come up in my life and my guests' lives, and just some interesting topics that we can cover. Today, I have my good friend Ben Petkie on with me. He is a high school physics teacher in northern Massachusetts. We met about 8 years ago in 2017 when we were in college. Ben, thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here. Can't believe it's been 8 years already.
Yeah, no, it is crazy to think about how similar and how different we were back then.
Absolutely. Lots of evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny is I think back, the topic that we were talking about today was we wanted to talk about vibration and where does that go from physical realm to the spiritual realm. And I think a good place to kick off with that is I remember us, early on, this must have been like maybe February 2018, just like chatting. And I was like, man, this guy's just got good vibes.
Yeah,
I feel like we really kicked it off. I
no.
mean, we didn't actually spend that much time together at the very beginning of our time knowing each other because you also chose to travel a little bit and
I was on a little hiatus for a while
yeah.
and then came back. But no, yeah, I totally remember back when we first met and that whole kind of class of people that we came in with. And it was really a good introduction to college, I think. Like you were saying, good vibes with people kind of gets you in the comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I one of the things that we sort of talked about in our little pre-chat was this funny concept of you talk about vibes. Yeah, I really vibe with this person, or I came into this place, just had good vibrations. And then also this interesting piece of, the physics background that you have that you literally teach. Like you were telling me the other day that so much of what you teach about is vibration.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we get into light and sound waves and stuff like that. That's a big thing. One of the things I bring out early on in my year, basically when the parents come to visit, is a standing wave machine. So basically, it vibrates a string, and you can see kind of the different standing waves on the string itself. And that kind of just visualizes what waves can kind of look like because oftentimes, we cannot see waves because they are sound waves or they are something like that, or electromagnetic waves. We can't see that stuff, but there are physical representations like ocean waves and standing waves with a machine or something like that.
Now that's interesting. Just like pointing out there from a physical standpoint that there's waves around us that are very physically present, that some that we can't see and that you wouldn't really be able to tell without some special measurement. But some of them, you're like they're right in your face. You're like that is
Right,
a wave
exactly.
right
Like,
there.
for example, yeah, like, light waves, although they're very high frequency and stuff like that, we see light every single day. The sun rises, we see those light waves. And analog to that, opposite is sound waves. We can't see them, but we do hear them every day. They travel through the air to our ears across vast spaces. Certain waves travel faster than others, but you're totally right. A lot are completely invisible to us. And through scientific discovery, we've been able to model and kind of take a look at what they might look like if we could see them.
Now, what makes something a wave?
So generally, a wave is has something called a wavelength. So there's a certain amount, you think of a little squiggle, goes from point to point, it's almost like a sideways S. There's a amount of length there. It can be very small, it can be very large. So think about ocean waves. You think of one crest of a wave to another crest of a wave. That is called a wavelength. So with ocean waves, they can be very easily visually interpreted as that. There's also the frequency of the wave. So that is how many times a second that wave passes you. So with ocean waves, that frequency could be pretty low because, they're only coming up to you if you've ever been to the beach every few seconds. Whereas something like right now, we're transmitting waves through audio devices and stuff like that, they can have a very high frequency. So think about a long wavelength, low frequency, big S, or a very low wavelength and a high frequency, and it's more of lines, something like that, like you would see on an EKG machine.
Yeah. Now, here's an interesting thing then is right? We wanted to talk about like vibration, vibes, like vibrate a certain frequency. Now, all not all vibrations are waves. Is that correct?
I would say yes, correct.
But some are all waves, all waves are vibrating.
Yes, sure.
So when you think about like I guess from your perspective, when we talk about this topic of we have physical waves, and physical vibrations that sort of one encompasses the other, and then we talk about this, more like spiritual, energetic, like man, I really vibe with this person, or I really vibe with this music, and it makes me feel a certain way. How do those things relate in your mind as, someone who teaches physics to people?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to start with music because that's something I think most people can relate to. Um, so, for example, you listen to an artist you really like that might release chemicals or endorphins in your brain, a certain amount, whether that be the lyrics that they are saying, singing, or rapping, or stuff like that, or just the background music that's kind of encompassing that. For example, I've seen online certain frequencies help calm your mind down, certain frequencies help you focus more and stuff like that. So I find it really interesting the spirituality and the science kind of overlap when these vibrations and waves that we're listening to through our ears can make us feel some kind of emotion, whether that be sadness, anger, happiness, excitement. People have all kinds of different playlists for different kinds of moods they're in. So I think it's definitely important to look into that. Why are these vibrations and waves making me feel a certain way? When in other senses, maybe if you're just chatting with someone, you don't feel quite the same. So it's, I think, important to look at the emotions that these waves kind of carry along with them, not just the physical matter, the actual emotions that kind of carry through with that.
Yeah, that was interesting of like I really like that example and like the way that you have to look at how waves or vibrations propagate through different media, right? Like
Hmm.
someone might, as an artist might, choose to sing. They sing into a recording voice. They're putting out sound waves, right? They're vibrating the air, right? They're vibrating their vocal cords, which then vibrates the air in front of them,
Hmm.
which then whatever recording device is taking that in, whether it be converting that into, you know, I guess like electromagnetic waves, right? If
Yeah,
you're
that
going
would be.
into modern recording, or if like you're trying to like etch it into vinyl, it's like literally physically vibrating the needle,
Yep.
which is then etching into the vinyl itself. For anyone that doesn't know how vinyl recording works, that is, and when I learned that, like that's super cool. You're literally just
Really
making it
is.
vibrate.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's actually some cool like experiments you can do with that. I don't know if you do that in your class where you can do like a very low tech sort of recording of something. Like you probably use like cardboard or something like that.
I haven't tried it quite yet, but I'm definitely going to have to look into that because we do a decent amount of projects with waves and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll have to talk offline more about that. It's always
Yeah,
fun talking
sure.
about these science project ideas. Right,
Absolutely. There's
this
unlimited.
wave is propagating, or these vibrations are propagating, from the person, the sound waves, then the electromagnetic waves, right? It's going through your computer or into your
Mhm.
computer, whatever you're streaming. Now it's coming out as sound waves again, going from electromagnetic to sound waves into your ears, vibrating your eardrum. And then something is happening as it goes into your brain,
Mhm.
right? Your brain is processing that as some sort of electrical signal, right? Now back into electromagnetic waves.
Mhm.
And then you change.
Yeah.
It's like you now have a different vibration because someone across the world or across time, decades ago
Mhm.
chose to take the vibrations in their brain and propagate it forward through all these different media.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a interesting phenomenon called resonance or natural frequency. So every object has it. I like to I'll delve more into the people side of it in a second. But for example, if you have a certain instrument, I have these sounding kind of bells that vibrate at 440 hertz, meaning every second they vibrate 440 times, and that passes that along to your ear. Now that doesn't matter if you hit it hard, if you hit it light, it's louder or less loud, but that's its natural frequency, its natural vibration. You cannot change that unless you change the material or the object itself. There have been examples in construction. A Tacoma Bridge collapse, I think it was back in the 1940s, the wind kind of picked up to a certain degree and it matched the natural frequency of that bridge. And even though the gusts were only 20 or 30 miles per hour, the resonance, which is when the waves build off of each other. So think of two waves overlapping, they can grow and grow and grow and become louder or larger. And so that's what happened with that bridge. And so, the construction workers didn't really take that into account. But on the person side, yes, I totally agree. You're propagating these waves to each other, and that changes you and changes that kind of motivation. And what you were saying, how it's fascinating how quickly these waves can transfer through the computer to each other. Because I remember offline we were speaking about how humans are doing pretty good right now. We can survive off of just farming animals. We don't really need cars. We don't need to travel to space or anything like that. Yet there's something in us where we want to continue to learn these things and be able to communicate with each other through this kind of media. So the science is allowing me and you right now to vibe out, to match our frequencies with each other and match a topic that we both find interesting.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. Where it's like a synergy,
Yes,
like not just
absolutely.
overlapping, but we're using science and spiritual connection together.
Yeah, and I also kind of like to say every person has their own natural frequency, and that's
Now
different for
that
every
was
person.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and that was an interesting thing that I wanted to touch on as you were talking about, right, the sounding bell, right? And that it's
Hmm.
you said it has a resonant frequency, and no matter how you hit it, it's going to vibrate at that frequency unless you change it, unless you
Hmm.
change the material in some way. So it got me thinking about people,
Hmm.
right? We might have some frequency that we resonate at, or some number of frequencies that we resonate at. There might be a handful of them because I think if I understand, like, you might have a dominant resonant frequency, but there might be like underlying ones as well that combine
Yes,
together.
absolutely.
Um, but as humans, we're always changing.
We're elastic.
Yes, so we, through changing ourselves, can change what our resonance frequency is. Like
Absolutely.
I'm sure like you've run into people, you're like, man, that guy's just a great vibe. And then
Hmm.
you talk to someone who knew this person like 10 years ago, and they're like, yeah, no, they weren't always like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's like the brain, like maybe the world is putting out a certain frequency and your brain isn't on that same wavelength. And so you might need to do some spiritual work to kind of get yourself to where you need to be because I don't know about you, but I say some environments just give out a certain frequency or vibe. Like, for example, when I go into work, I have memories associated with it. They can be good or bad, but I have to be able to process those so I am in a good headspace when I'm at work. But it wasn't always that way. For example, last year we went through a work stoppage for quite a while. I associated very negatively with my workspace. So getting back there, I had to do some work with myself to say, okay, the vibrations and frequencies have changed at this location. My brain now has to match those so I'm in my best spot possible. Does it always match them? No, we're constantly changing. But I completely agree that throughout the years, for example, we met about 8 years ago, our frequencies that we vibed with were probably a lot different back then than our frequencies we vibe with now. So, when someone says, "Oh, I could never see myself in this position or whatever," or I never thought I was going to be a high school teacher. Obviously, my brain had a certain frequency that it was tuned into, which happened to be at the time the medical field. I was really resonating with the medical field and saying, oh, that's what I want to go into. That's calling to me. So when someone says they kind of have their calling, I kind of think of it as a resonant frequency or a natural frequency matching up with them. But throughout the years and over time, talking with many people, hearing from high school teachers, my brain started to kind of shift into matching the frequency of public education. Now, there's a wide range there, depending on what school you're in, private, public, urban, rural, all that kind of stuff. They're all very different. So, it's not just a teacher vibration, it's a location based and person based kind of frequency that, if you match with it, you're going to have a much better time in life than if you're not matching because there's these interference patterns that if we go back to the science on them, right? You can have two waves coming into each other, and if they match up, one's a crest and the other one's a crest, then the crest becomes bigger. So I think of that as a positive or constructive interference is what it's called.
Yeah.
Now, you can also have the way noise canceling earbuds work, destructive interference. Say two waves come in, one crests and one goes the opposite way. You have a flat line right there.
From
And
canceling out.
so exactly. So they can cancel each other out. So, depending on your situation, you might want to cancel out that certain vibration because that's part of your life or part of something that you're dealing with. And you don't necessarily have to cancel it, but we've gone through life activation and cord cutting and stuff like that. And so I kind of see that as similar, being able to maybe destructively interfere in a good way with it. Whereas
Yeah.
connecting with positive things, you want to constructively interfere. So you have those great amplitudes on the positives in your life, and you can cancel out those negatives with the proper energy sent back their way.
Really like that a lot. And you mentioned like life activation and cord cutting, which are both healings that we've done. I've had them a number of times. You've gotten each of them once. That's so it's about certain vibrations. Like we're working with vibration. Life activation is
Mhm.
about raising vibration, bringing in more higher vibration to your being. Cord cutting is actually about cutting off connections with
Mhm.
negative vibrations that we don't want to be influenced by. Um, and I thought it was when you talk about the noise canceling headphones, I actually really like that idea of it's not that you aren't it's not that those, if you're talking about negative vibes, right? You got bad
Mhm.
vibes coming in, things that negative energy, whatever you want to call it, that's coming at you. Thinking about it is like you're not going to stop it by doing nothing, right? If you just
Exactly.
have even if you plug in your ears,
Mhm.
it will still vibrate through. But a noise canceling headphone works by sending out the opposite vibration. So they
Exactly.
can, and it's like someone puts a lot of hate or anger at you.
Mhm.
And you've often seen people try to fight hate with hate.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, actually, recently I had an interaction at a gas station that was exciting. I parked a little too far from the pump and had run in to grab some snacks. And a guy out there at an opposite pump, as I came back to my car, he started calling me all kinds of names, including idiot and worse. And you can really, if I fought back with that anger, I'm matching his negative vibrations, and then they become larger and larger until, like a bridge, like the Tacoma Bridge, it kind of collapses and it just goes to all chaos. Instead, I said, hey, like, hey, man, it's Sunday. We're all just trying to have a good day. Like, I get it that I'm parked a little far away. And he kept calling names of me, and I just said, sir, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I got in my car and I left. And you know what? I felt a lot better than, I'm sure we've all gotten into it, whether it be road rage or with a argument with a stranger, where you get that negative energy and you walk away from that and you don't feel good. But like you said, I really like that you pointed out you could plug your ears, but that's not doing anything to cancel out those waves coming in. That's just a small coping mechanism. With the earbuds, like you said, they're actually sending something back out. So you having control of what you're sending back out, you don't necessarily always have control of what's coming in, but if you can control what's going out, then you can always find yourself in a better situation.
Absolutely. I mean, it comes back to a key principle in spirituality, particularly in the Hermetic lineage, which is the one that follow in the modern mystery school, that your greatest realm of change is within yourself.
Hmm.
So it's exactly like you were saying, you can control what you're putting out. And if you're choosing to put out, it's honestly remarkably simple that, no matter what's coming at you, if you're putting out, love, joy, passion, these good things, right? Either it's going to cancel out the negative things that are coming at you, or it's going to join together with like someone's putting love at you and you put love back in, that love becomes stronger.
Yeah, amplification. It amplifies, gets bigger.
Yeah. And not to simplify it too much, because of course there's
Yeah.
discernment on, what does love look like? In some
Hmm.
cases, love is, really warm and compassionate, and sometimes it's tough and firm. Um,
Absolutely.
but it's still it can take a big weight off your chest of just knowing that having choosing that you are going to put out love against hate, that will be the right choice because
Absolutely. And, someone
it's
else
not
could.
going to make the hate grow stronger.
Exactly, because someone else could cancel your love out with their hate. But if that's not going to hurt you necessarily because you already sent out those good vibrations. But if you overlap both positively, then you're only going to benefit. So, like you're saying, if you're putting out these good feelings, this love, and it comes in, like you said, there's different forms of love, like there's different forms of natural frequencies. So, a tougher kind of love could be 200 hertz. A gentler kind of love could be 800 hertz, if you want to think about it scientifically. But yes, if you just put out those positive vibrations all the time, worst thing that's going to happen is you cancel out negative vibrations, which is a good thing for anybody to be able to do.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard
Definitely.
because I mean, there's like we talked about there, you can have sort of different kinds of we're complex beings. We probably have more than one resonant frequency,
Absolutely.
and the amount we can be influenced by other people is we talk about right with resonance frequency, right, is the whole big thing, right? You can have two tuning forks that have the same resonance frequency. You play one of them and
Hmm.
without them even touching, like just vibrating through the air, the other one will start to ring.
Hmm.
And we see that with people, right? You get into it's a fight at the gas station, right? If someone's being angry at you, for you to choose not to respond to that anger, not to resonate
Hmm.
with it.
Exactly.
It's remarkable how much we can be influenced by other people's vibrations.
Yeah, and when you're in a crowd of people or a group of people, I always think about it like in terms of my classroom. Like you were saying earlier, we can simplify it and just say, one wave is canceling another one. Oftentimes, there's a lot of waves happening all at once, and you do not just have, for example, in my classroom when we're doing group work, there's 25 kids talking, there's music going on, there's me speaking, there's sounds of chairs, and unfortunately, those water bottles falling off the table, those metal ones that make a really loud sound. And that always scares everybody and changes the vibration and the mood. So you got to almost think of instead of just one coming at each other or two waves coming in, there's maybe hundreds of waves kind of overlapping each other. And you got to figure out that fine dance to where you feel comfortable on a frequency that you are okay with.
Yeah, it's how does this come up in your because like we've talked about how this comes up in your personal life.
Mhm.
Do any of these things ever come up in your professional life, like with actually the way that you teach? Is there any way that this relates to that?
Yes, absolutely. So every student, I have about 120 total. They're very different. Every single one is very different. And I have to have my finger on the pulse because you talk about the hierarchy of needs, the base level is safety and security. So if I have a student come in, we use an example of that we've used at professional development. A student, we can liken them, and this goes somewhere, to a can of soda, right? If in the morning they wake up and they're that can of soda and it's being shaken, they have bad vibrations from their parents, they missed an assignment, they're nervous about school, that soda can just keeps getting shaken. And then as soon as they walk in that door, if the first thing you say to them is, "Why didn't you do that?" or give them some kind of criticism, that can explode. And then it's kaput. That student's not going to be engaged for the day. So I've had so many times where I could just kind of feel that a student, because after I get to know them for at least a few weeks, a couple months, I'll know what they're generally acting like. And I can tell through body language or how they're speaking if they're feeling a little bit off. So generally, what I'll do is if it's not a very serious case, I'll usually just send an email following up with them, like, "Hey, I noticed you were a little off in class today. I hope you're okay." But if it is more serious and they come in, I've had students come in crying before because something's going on in their life. Some bad things are going on. And so I pull them into the back room and I say, "Listen, it's important what we're learning today, but it's more important that you're in a good headspace. So we're going to not worry about what we're doing in class today. You can stay back here if you'd like, or take a little walk if you need to. And I'm going to come check on you and we're going to chat." Sometimes that involves getting them a snack or something like that. Teachers always have to have snacks ready because that changes the vibe right away. Um, and so, yeah, that's like the baseline, I feel like that's the most important part of my job is knowing if the students are ready to learn. Because if a student's not ready to learn, they got a lot going on in their life, they're not going to, and that can possibly disrupt other students in the classroom as well. So you need to get that baseline level of how are these people feeling? What can I do to put them on the right course? And do I need to remove them from a situation or change their situation within my ability because I'm the, adult in the room?
I mean, it's a remarkable responsibility. You think about it that way of anytime you are the sort of leader of a space, right? So like you're the adult in the room. It's very apparent as a teacher that you have responsibility. Um, and you're in charge of essentially controlling like the vibe of the room. And now
Absolutely.
you
And,
have, 30 students here and they could have all sorts of things going on in their lives, but at the end of the day, you need to be the one to cultivate the space and manage it.
absolutely. That's the most important part. I love physics. I am a physics teacher, but I always tell them at the end of the day, I want you to come out of this class like feeling like you learned something, but just a better critical thinker than you were. So that doesn't mean you need to know all of Newton's laws or something like that, but I want you to come out a better person due to the hard work that you put in.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for teaching our future. No,
I
truly, it is
appreciate
it
the
is good to
appreciation.
have, yeah, it's good to have people in those roles that care a lot about,
Yeah,
right, the well-being of the students. Because I think you're so right. The
absolutely.
knowing how to think is a lot more important than knowing things.
Yeah, and I'll say this also goes with the adults in the building as well, because you can find yourself sitting in the staff room during lunch, which I like to do often, but sometimes the teachers bounce off each other and build up those negative vibrations. This student, that student, this or that, they did this or that. I'm frustrated with this class because and sometimes it's nice to have that voice of reason because then if the teacher goes in like a shaken soda can, they're not going to be the best teacher version of themselves. And like I said, last year we went through a bit of a strike in the school. And so those vibrations were all messed up when we got back into the building. And so the rest of that year almost felt like pure chaos because none of the vibrations were lining up. The conversations that we needed to have weren't really necessarily being had. And luckily, we have summer vacation to almost reset our natural frequency or just kind of see where we need to go. Because, leading the students is all the adults. So that also comes from the principal and the superintendent. If you're getting negative vibrations or bad vibes from them, that trickles down the ladder. So it's not only important for us and the kids, but it's important for us and the other faculty, staff, and administration to all be on a similar level, or you will not have a great learning environment like I feel like we do at Beverly High School.
Awesome. Um, yeah, no, I mean, it's really important to note how much this, I mean, I'm glad you shared like how much this influences everything that you're doing. Um,
Absolutely.
because I think it's like very easy, right, to talk about, yeah, all right, we have we're talking about the vibes and, the vibrations that people are putting off. And you could very easy to look at it and say, like, oh, it's a bunch of like, hokey pokey, whatever, hippie
Sure.
lingo. Um, but the reality is, right, these things are real. They do influence whatever you choose to call it, that
Mhm.
we do influence each other and how our demeanor, our tone, um, and in very similar ways to what we see with physical waves and physical vibrations that you would study in your physics classroom.
Yeah, it's a great way to equate the two. If you have a more science themed person or a more science brain person, if you want to say that way, I think this is a great way to kind of cater to them. Absolutely. And then also, I kind of wanted to talk about, I remember you telling me a year or so ago, I think you did some kind of blessing in one of the local parks just to kind of try to match the vibrations in that area. Did you want to expand on that a little bit?
I am, I'm not sure I remember what that is.
Oh, that's okay. I think you mentioned you and a group of people were going to a local park and doing some magic work and healing work there. That's okay.
I, yeah, no, I mean, it sounds cool. I definitely don't think the one thing I can think of was and maybe this was something that I wanted to do was go to different parks and like pick up trash.
Yeah,
This might not be what you were getting at, but this is the only
that's
thing I
okay.
can think of is
No, absolutely. But it's like we can influence environments, right? It's like
yeah,
even if you're just picking up trash, that means the next person that would see that trash and maybe be put a little bit off by it, they're now not put off by that. So you're influencing the environment, which then goes to the people because waves, right? They go through the air, they hit a solid, they vibrate through the solid, and they go on, so on and so forth. So they're going to vibrate through multiple mediums. So you can almost see that your influence on a environment then transfers to people and then to other people or other environments.
yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the whole reason. That's the whole reason to do it is to choose kind of the world that you want to see, right?
Absolutely.
If you want the world to be a certain way, you're not going to get it by just, yelling at people and telling them that they need to be different,
Mhm.
right? That is not how you change. The way that you change is you create the change in the world. You start the propagation because you're not going to create love through hate.
Mhm.
You create love through love. You create joy through joy. If you want a clean park, you create a clean park through cleaning a little part of the park.
Yeah. You're manifesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, one person sees you picking up trash and maybe they think, oh, maybe I should pick up trash. In fact, I even had this scenario where I was walking with some friends in a park and I just picked up some trash and kept walking. And then the person next to me was like, oh, what was that? I was like, just like to pick up the trash when I see it. And then they picked up a piece of trash.
Hmm.
And another person that we were with, she was like, it was her with her husband. She was like, oh, you got to pick one up. And he was like, oh, all right. And he picked up a piece of trash.
But you see how the waves transferred through all the people, even if they at first were a little bit like, iffy about it, it eventually got them on the same wavelength as you. And then that just becomes a whole new vibe with that group.
Yeah, on the same wavelength as you.
They're
And
on
it's
the
so funny
same
how
wavelength.
it's so funny how it's steeped in our language,
It
vibration.
is.
It's, I really resonate with that. Someone says something, oh yeah, I really resonate with that. They really vibed with me. We're on the same wavelength.
Mhm.
Um, it's it's very interesting how it's so steeped in there. I know one thing I've mentioned hermetics a little bit. Hermetics is a key piece of spiritual work that I do, and it has seven main principles. I think the third principle of hermetics is the principle of vibration.
Mm,
Nothing is still, everything moves, everything vibrates.
yeah. Everything does at a microscopic level, right? Like everything, even the solids that, my computer is sitting on a desk right now, those particles are vibrating. Maybe we can't see it, but just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real.
Exactly. Like you're saying with the light waves that we can't really, see. You can't see radio waves. You take a spring and you go side to side and you'll see that.
Hmm.
Just because we can't see it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Exactly.
And yeah, so it's like if you really want to go to this, push the scientific principle as far as you can go, the for something to not vibrate, it would have to be at 0 degrees Kelvin. That is absolute zero, right? Because if you want to get to a real scientific level of it, temperature is actually measuring movement. It's a measure of
Yes,
kinetics. So how much are particles moving? Hot things,
absolutely.
particles move very fast, and cold things, they move very slowly.
Hmm.
Right? That's why like a liquid can, flow and move because these particles move so fast and they're so far apart from each other.
Hmm.
Where a solid, they move, they vibrate, in a small enough space or slow enough that they stay together.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is physically impossible, as far as the science can tell right now, in this universe, absolute zero does not exist. There is
Correct. Yeah, you
always
can't.
some measure of vibration. And it's just interesting. Is like that matches purely with one of the most fundamental principles of hermetics, the foundation of the spirituality is that all things vibrate.
All things vibrate. Everything has a vibe.
Everything has a vibe. Well,
Um,
Ben, this has been a wonderful vibe having this chat. Anything more you wanted to add?
yeah, one more thing. I think one thing I really teach on in waves is you're not necessarily transferring matter. So even when you see ocean waves, that water is going back and forth a little bit, but it's mostly going up and down. So waves are a means to transfer energy. And I know you do energy work and stuff like that. So I think it directly connects with that is waves are not propagating necessarily matter. Matter is not moving across, when I'm speaking to someone across the room, all the air particles are not going from my mouth all the way to their ears. It's vibrating each other. So that's all about energy. Waves transfer energy, not matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's exactly. I couldn't put it better myself, right? The is energy work's all about vibes.
It is.
Yeah, and you can look at it at at a very you could look at it in a very dismissive way of saying like that's a bunch of hocus pocus. Or
Easily.
you could look at it and say, no, that is just how the world vibrates.
Yeah. It's like putting in, the either noise canceling earbuds versus the earplugs. You can either put in the earplugs and say blah blah, it's not real, or you can put in noise canceling headphones and maybe it can constructively interfere and you can actually let it into your head a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Say the best way to experience it is right. I mean, the best way to know is to experience it, I suppose,
Exactly.
right? For the things that you can't see, the only way you can really learn more about it is to steep yourself in it and see,
Exactly.
well, let's find out. Does it resonate with me?
Got to dip your toe in before you can swim.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, Ben, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure catching up with you and talking about these fun topics.
Absolutely, Jake. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching or listening to Science to Sorcery. This has been a wonderful time, and I hope to see you all or provide more wonderful conversations for you all in the future.